Welcome to this edition of From the Legal Side, where everything is always about the law, the legality, the risk, and the liability. And today's edition is no different, as we're going to be talking about the use of your personal vehicle for the benefit of your employer. I'm your host, Rick McCann, founder of Private Officer International and Armor College. Today's subject probably is not going to sit too well with your employer, your supervisor, and we have many company owners and business personnel who do listen to our shows on a regular basis, so this one probably will not make them very happy. But today we want to talk about the downside to using your personal vehicle for the benefit of the company. Many people do use their personal vehicle for the general purposes of getting to and fro from business services, contracts, or deliveries, all sorts of things. But using your personal vehicle for company use, it really has always been a very, very gray area. And it's one that we don't recommend because it poses such a real liability and many other issues for both the employer and the employee. Let's first understand the difference between what is a contractor or an independent contractor and that relationship which makes you an employee and an employer, because they are completely different. If you're driving to and from work, wherever that might be, whether it's an hour away from the house or 15 minutes, that's for your benefit. That's not for the employer's benefit. That's for you, and therefore you cannot put that risk, or if you were to have a traffic collision, you cannot ask your employer for their assistance in helping you with the damage. That's all on you. However, the difference, because you're using it, of course, for your method, your mode of transportation. But there is a difference between being an independent contractor status and that of being an employee-employer relationship, and we want to understand that. And a prime example of this is going to be, well, actually, Amazon Prime. A number of years ago, Amazon, when they began their Prime service, rather than hire tens of thousands of delivery employees and building up a huge fleet of Amazon delivery service vans or delivery vans, they came up with a plan, and that plan was to put tens of thousands of people to work, but not as employees, rather as independent contractors. And so they started the Amazon Delivery Service Program and recruited hundreds and thousands of independent workers, and they set them up in business for themselves by assigning territories and leasing out the vehicle to these new independent delivery drivers. Amazon was smart because they knew we don't want tens of thousands of our employees driving around making all of these deliveries and having that huge risk and liability that they're going to get into accidents and possibly even fatal and serious accidents, and we would be liable. So what they did instead was they set up a huge program. It was a benefit to those who always wanted to own a business, and it was a huge benefit, even more so, to Amazon, the company. The Amazon service delivery service program starts with a basic application, a background check, maybe a drug test, hopefully so. They finance the people to be independent business owners, to be self-employed. They set them up. They really do have a pretty decent program to help people to get into business for themselves. Of course, it's for the benefit of Amazon, but it also has benefited hundreds and thousands of people. In fact, I just read, while I was doing some study for this radio program, I read where one company has over 60 drivers and multiple territories. So once you become not a franchisee, but an independent contractor, although it is sort of like a franchise, once you become a delivery service program independent driver for them, you can build up other territories. You can invest more money. You can have them assign you more territories. So it really is sort of like an affiliate or a franchise business operation, and it's very beneficial to both the company, obviously, and those new business owners. In that situation, all of those vehicles, even though they are leased through Amazon or through any other service provider, the business owner is responsible for the drivers as well as any accidents that they might cause or be involved in, and that's why we have insurance. That is considered an independent operated business. You have an agreement with Amazon. There are many delivery services across the country that operate very similar. You are independently being hired to provide service or goods or even delivery. I've recently purchased some appliances, and it was delivered by an independent contractor of this very large-scale appliance store. But as a self-employed, independent employee of yourself, you're responsible for all of those bills: vehicle maintenance, tires, fuel, brakes, tune-ups, any accident damage, and of course, you have a very high risk and you have high insurance. That's what business ownership is all about. Anytime that you see somebody who is a subcontractor or an independent contractor, they are self-employed and liable for all of their debt, all of their bills, all of their insurance, all of the liability. That puts them in the business side of the relationship. You're not an employee. However, as an employee of a company, it's totally different, and therefore the liability is so much more. And I want to kind of reiterate where that line separates you from an employee or an independent contractor. The federal law is very specific about this, and unfortunately, in my line of work, we do run into many service operators, service employees who are operating independently, although they are under an employee-employer relationship. The federal government says if you are told what hours you have to work, if you're told when to take a lunch break, what days you're off, when you can take a vacation, if you're told specifically how to do the job, then you're an employee and an employer relationship. If, on the other hand, I was to hire you and contract with you to come in and paint my house, and I said, look, Bill, I want all of the rooms painted. I specify the colors, the trim, I don't really have any specific timeline, but I do need for you to get it done this month. Well, now you are a contractor. You're an independent. You are a business owner, because I'm not telling you the hours to do the job. I'm not telling you the specifics. I'm not responsible for your taxes, your insurance, your Social Security pay. I'm not responsible for anything that happens. You are self-employed. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we've got a lot more to talk about. And as I said in the beginning of the program, this is such an important topic, and unfortunately, so many people just don't understand it. We'll be right back.
In a minute, I'm going to drown in this pool, surrounded by friends and relatives. That's because Dad thinks Mom is watching me, and Mom thinks Dad is. But actually, nobody is watching me. And you rarely make a sound when you're struggling in the pool.
Don't assume someone else is watching. Become a water watchdog at abbyshope.org.
From coast to coast, cops are cracking down on seatbelt violations. Buckle up day and night or expect a ticket. It doesn't matter who you are or where you live, they'll be on the lookout. Cops write tickets to save lives. Click it or ticket.
Welcome back to this edition from the legal side, where everything is all about the law, legalities, liabilities, and risk. Today, we're talking specifically about the employee-employer relationship under the federal law and independent contractors, self-employed persons, and what really is and is not a independent contractor. Specifically, we're covering today the risk and liability of using your vehicle for business use. And unfortunately, a lot of employees fall under this category. In our business at Armor College, we do a lot of regulatory training and a lot of service techs, whether they be cable installers or alarm businesses or fiber installers, people who have to go into businesses and residential customers to either deliver a product or provide a service, often use their own personal vehicle. And that is very tricky. It is, it's legal if you agree to do it, of course. Think of companies like DoorDash and Instacart and Grubhub and all of these other door-to-door delivery services that are provided by independent delivery personnel. I often get groceries delivered from various grocery stores, and the people who deliver those groceries do not work for, say, Sam's Club or Costco or Walmart or Publix. They are independent. They work for delivery companies, and they're independent drivers using their personal vehicle. Should they get involved in a car accident, should somebody hit them, should their tires go flat, they are responsible for their own damages. And the independent agreement that these people have with these businesses spell out the liability and who is, going to be the person responsible for any type of accident or lawsuit or liability. That's what makes these companies, they shield themselves from liability. And there are many big box stores that do the same thing. They will sell you the goods, and then they subcontract that delivery and installation of furniture, office supplies, appliances, and unfortunately, the person delivering those goods or services are stuck. Even though that they may be either, an employee of the company or an independent, either way, they're going to be stuck for any accident cost or liability or higher insurance and so forth. Like I said, I buy a lot of things and I have them delivered, I have them installed, and more times than not, those people coming to the door are not employees of the company. As long as you have a contract, an agreement, it's all legal and you understand the risk. But here's the problem areas that really is concerning, but yet they continue all the time. We often do training for service providers, installers, subcontracted, or employees of the business. And of course, in the security field, that's considered a service industry. So many times those security personnel not only use their vehicle as a mode of transportation to and from work, but they're using those vehicles to make patrols of the property, sometimes to make patrols of multiple properties. Instead of the security company going out and buying a vehicle or leasing a vehicle, they say, hey, Henry, George, Tony, we're going to have you patrol XYZ property, and then I want you to go over to XYYZ property, and they line up a patrol for you to do using your personal vehicle. Sometimes they reimburse you for gas, and sometimes they don't. But even if they do reimburse you for gas, you are still liable should you have an accident. About 2 years ago or so, I ran into a service technician during one of our trainings, and he said that he had been involved in 3 accidents in less than a year. The company, they didn't care. You know why? Because that employee, he was not an independent contractor, he was an employee on the clock. That employee was driving his own vehicle. So every accident that he had, he was responsible for that damage. He was responsible for taking care of the damage of any vehicle that he hit or that was involved. Luckily for him, one of the accidents, he was hit by another vehicle. A second accident, he hit a pole because of a downpour of rain. And the third accident, again, he was sitting at a red light, and he was involved in a chain reaction accident. So, luckily nobody was really hurt. The use of a personal vehicle for company use, business use, is a gray area. As long as the employee is willing, as long as the employee understands the ground rules and understands he's not being paid any extra, then so be it. But it's not I don't think it's not a good situation for the employee. Using your personal vehicle, especially for patrols or going back and forth to different clients, is a high-risk situation for any employee. Let me explain a couple of things that has happened to security personnel driving their personal vehicle while patrolling the property appliance. We just had one in Mobile, Alabama about 3 years ago, and there's been others since then. The personal vehicle in Mobile, Alabama, about 3 years ago, a security officer was patrolling a community, and it was dark at night. He was not familiar with the area, and he went right into a lake. Yeah, he drove into a lake. Luckily, He was a good swimmer. He was able to get out of the vehicle, and he was okay. But the vehicle was totaled. And you know what? He did not have insurance at that time. His insurance had lapsed. He's out of a car. The employer is not responsible. So this poor guy, already making low wages, now has no vehicle. A number of years ago in Atlanta, Georgia, another security officer patrolling a high-rise garage did the same thing. He crashed. Luckily, he was using a company vehicle. Things happen when you're working. And when you're driving your own vehicle, you're taking the risk and the responsibility and the liability that comes with it. Ran into a service technician for an alarm service, one of our clients that we've had many years, and I knew almost since day one that their employees use their own vehicles. But this employee, using his own vehicle, was involved in a serious accident. He was on the company clock, and here's the other thing I'm going to get into shortly is the gray area, but he was on the company clock, and he was in between clients on the way to another customer's home, and he was involved in a serious accident. He had to file a lawsuit. He got an attorney and filed a lawsuit against his employer, and yeah, the court ruled in his favor because he was on the clock. He was in between customers. He was under the direction of his employer. So if you're using your vehicle with the not only the permission, but really the direction and command of your employer, and you're involved in a serious accident, then the company could be held liable. Unfortunately, this puts the employee into a bad situation because they would have to file a lawsuit if the employer didn't step up. Even if the employee agrees to use the vehicle for the benefit of the employer, if there's an accident, the employer could still be sued either by the employee or by a secondary person who was also involved in that accident and injured or the vehicle damaged. That's why I say this is a very gray area and one that you should really consider before you say, yes, I'll use my vehicle. Using your vehicle on the public road, it really is not to the benefit of the employer to the degree that they might think. Employees often do have accidents, but let's think about this. The employee is under the influence of alcohol or drugs. Many drivers today, in fact, a national statistic is that many drivers are under the influence of not alcohol, but marijuana these days. And there are more accidents, traffic accidents, some pointing to this marijuana use, others saying carelessness and intoxication from alcohol, all of these combinations. It is not to the employer's benefit to have the employee to use a vehicle because the risk and the liability is so high. I know that the employer is going to directly put it back on the shoulders of the employee if they're involved in an accident. Oh, well, Billy Bob, he said he would drive his vehicle. I told him, nah, don't do that. And he said, yeah, that's no problem. I'll do it. He said, she said, and all of a sudden you've got this big conflict and lawsuit, and the judge will have to figure it out. From an employee's view, it is never good to use your personal vehicle for the benefit of any employer, unless you are an independent contractor, you've signed an agreement, or you are self-employed in some other manner, and your vehicle is your company vehicle and your personal vehicle. That's going to wrap it up for this edition of From the Legal Side. Until the next time, guys, be safe, be blessed, and we'll see you back here on the radio.
You're listening to an episode of the Private Officer Pete Radio.